Okay. All right, welcome to lesson 9 for H Radio 223 part-timers. My name is Chris. As you know, we've had a session together, and man, I'm so excited for the year ahead with you and your journey across broadcasting, specifically in radio. All right. So again, just with what are we, week 3? We're looking at 2 lessons. So lesson 8 and 9, just because 7 includes a practical that we covered the week before. So I'm going to keep it simple and end off with this particular lesson. We once again will look at one, I think one, maybe two. One is enough, I think, for videos, just as an in-betweener for this particular lesson, which is from chapter 7, Next Level Radio, 7.6, Audio Production Systems, 266 to 268, 7.7, the Internet and Social Media Systems, 268 to 270, Studio Engineering and Equipment, which is what I want to throw in that video. So specifically, actually, what I'm gonna do with the video is I picked one that literally is about like a studio engineer, right? Okay, an audio engineer. And I thought that'd be cool, just to kind of give you a bit of a difference as to knowing how they work and what's important to them in terms of tools and approaches, right? Okay, and outside broadcasting, which we did start already last lesson, and we're just going to have a look, like a look at the equipment, which also ties in with your obviously your formative one, right? 274 to 279. Let's get into it, right? Okay. So audio production systems, most audio production will be done by qualified sound engineers or sound producers. We often confuse, I also did. I mean, it's only because when you do move, let's say from like community radio where you don't necessarily have a committed sound engineer, but the producers or people in production will behave as both content producers or sound engineers and or sound engineers that will put together the jingles, that will put together, ads, whatever it may be, should they not be provided to the station by a client, and so on and so forth. That is what a sound engineer does. Sit in their studio all day long, get, obviously record the voice of artists, the vocals that must go in, and then construct something cool in whatever it is that they are directed to do. So they have a directive for a project or a something or something, and that's what they get busy with, right? So sound engineers we know can also like they do also work across in terms of across the board or the yeah, that's right, from the music industry where you are producing obviously in a mass, so in a kind of in a larger capacity, with those particular studios are massive, and those desks are very confusing for people like myself, because I'm not proficient. Everyone with their own places and spaces that we can make this particular medium and the medium better and better, right? But it's massive. I'm sure you've seen like a video or two you've come through or come past a stream or two that shows you when like a musician that you are like a fan of is busy putting together a new song or working on their album, EP, LP, whatever it may be, right? And you can kind of imagine the process right now. So anyway, these engineers produce audio by mixing, implementing, and processing sounds that will be used, in our case, on air. And all audio, aside from presenters' spoken words and the actual music, have to actually be produced, right? So I think that's kind of straightforward. I'm going to keep boring you with an explanation on something that is just plain and simple. Okay. So an audio production edit suite should be available to do the following 2 things, right? Import and export various audio file formats for editing, right? So what is a suite? So we can call obviously the Adobe suites that work, Adobe Audition plus others within the suite intertwine to obviously get the best or produce the best form of audio output, right? But there's so many others that are free, like GarageBand and what is the other one? Audacity, right? That are available for more amateurs. So, for example, when I say amateur producers, even in your case, amateur, you're a novice, you're starting out, you want to maybe start at home and edit from home. You can just get these for free, right? Otherwise, you're going to be obviously working on, click on Logic, some kind of Apple product. So yeah, Mac product that will be in our sound studios, right? Record audio from one or more inputs and store recordings in the computer's memory as digital audio. Then you got to obviously edit the start time, the stop time, and duration of any sound on the audio timeline. Why is that important? Specifically for songs that will maybe be, I would think it would more than likely. So I'm just going to talk about the music compiler for the moment. Who loads songs will have to know how, let's say, the playback system works. If there's an intro, for example, right, we might have to edit the vocals of the start time of the vocals at a second between or within the song and the stop time, for example, should be faded or deprecates or whatever it may be, right? But just in general, like we need to be able to put this into our description, almost like of the file, because it serves a lot of purposes, right? So fade in or out of a clip or between clips, mix multiple sound sources, tracks, combine them at various volume levels, and pan from channel to channel to one or more output tracks. Now, these specific terminologies, right? So, terminology, for example, like panning and mixing and whatever reverbs and whatever equalization, like it says in noise reduction, flanging, reverbs, as I said, there, expansion, compression. This I am not going to teach you. This is what your sound engineering lecturer must teach you, right? Okay. And when you come back to me, for example, or this particular subject, you should know if I ask you to do, like, put a jingle together, you should be able to know. I obviously know how to check because I've done audio production for pretty much my entire life, right? On radio, producing my own stuff, definitely producing podcasts, vodcasts, whatever it is. I've worked with audio for now, like 2.5 decades. So I know what each one of these things should do, or do. The thing is, the problem here is like when you speak to me, for example, you speak to a sound engineer, the sound engineer is going to lead you directly into how to use these particular, for example, effects or functionalities within the sound editing software, like for example, Adobe Audition, or again, like Logic. They will explain to you why you should be using it in a certain way for a specific outcome, not just adding all effects and reverbs and, like I say, explain for what reason. Like, what are you doing? Why are you moving from a left to a right stereo sound? Like, it just kind of like know that there's a professional right there, like an expert professional that's I'm interested I'm interested in the product. They're interested in the obviously process, right? So playback sound often after being mixed, that can be sent to one or more outputs such as speakers, additional processors, or recording mediums. And then of course convert between different audio file formats, which there are just so many. But knowing exactly why we go use an MP3 or an OGG or what is the other one? It's an AIFF, right? Or I mean, I can carry on a wave, or there's so many out there. You don't just decide on which one you want to use just because it's there. Like an MP3 is a good one to use. It's very obviously it's compatible with anything that you might play back. I'm saying to air, whatever it is, and so it's a wave. But so are some of the others that you might have to import to a different, like a remote a computer that uses its own different or its own specific type of sound editing software or playback system, whatever it is, and might require a certain specific format, right? That can be played out on the playback system, for example, right? Then you need to know, okay, I'm dealing with this or that, or there's a kind of like I want to say like there's so I say a process standard, like so process standard within, let's say, a radio station, for example, they will say you can only use waves, or you can only use MP3s, you can only use these type of things. When we are producing an advert, it must be this format, it must be of this type of, so it must be stereo, not mono, it must be think what is it's not the bandwidth, man. It's the when you define I would when you define the format, it'll start giving you things like 44.1 kilohertz and 48.1 kilohertz, and what is the difference between all this type of stuff, right? Um uh is it the bandwidth? Hmm. Just I need to go, yeah, my memory, anyway, it's gone. But anyway, I can convert between different audio file formats, between obviously different sound quality levels. Okay, so there are many different audio production software that tools that are available to conduct this. We have to think of three things here: the stability of the software, the speed and response of the software, and the control interface. In other words, is it you will pick and choose, I'm saying, in or within an independent context, right? So on your own, what you might think or feel is a better use for you. So you're comfortable. I have always been comfortable in the Adobe Suite, which is a water. So I've always used that. I've used GarageBand as well as Audacity and Logic. I don't like Apple products. I don't. So so in terms of a preference, like I would definitely not use Logic or Pro Tools or whatever it may be. It's just not for me, right? Okay, but again, like if you look at, let's say, the SABC and what is that? I think it's the Audio School of Engineering, or the School for Audio Engineering. It's a very old campus or college or whatever it is, that specifically is the only one that can accredit you within sound engineering, right? Just it's just in Auckland Park, across from what I remember, it's just across from the SABC building, and you go there, for example, to go and get accredited, and they will only use, for example, Pro Tools to be able to, you want to become proficient in that, right? So it is like a common standard to use app products within sound engineering. But for you, as like I say, a standard lone independent running producer, right? Content producer, you can choose Adobe Audition, Logic Pro, Audacity, Reaper, FL Studio. All of them will do the job, I promise you. Okay. So the internet has fundamentally obviously changed. We know that, the way we experience audio products, as well as the way that we obtain our information. But not only can it distribute audio products, right? We can also enrich them with better quality images. Now we're going to add on. So for example, we want to be able to produce. Let's say you want to produce something for your television class, your television and video class, right? You know for a fact that you should rather be producing the well, I mean, when you record something on a lapel to maybe like there's a lapel that's got its own device, so you can connect the lapel to your phone or whatever it may be, right? Obviously the audio and the video are separate, right? So you'll be able to sync them all together. But syncing is just the beginning, right? Or maybe the end at a later point. You need to be able to think about, for example, is there an echo? Like, like with a lapel, you shouldn't, but you shouldn't have echoes, right? But you can have distortion. So you need to be able to know how to work the device as well, set up the device, calibrate the device, I would say, before you start shooting, as well, start recording. When we are doing podcasts, like pod slash vodcast together. So you'll have the podcast, but obviously it is what it's obviously like accompanied by a video version of it. So vodcast. Right, they have to use the vowels. It's too far away. It doesn't sound too good, right? And so the thing is, again, if you want to independently do this, we have to either invest, like if you want to do it independently for a long, like for the long run, then you rather need to invest in like high quality and obviously like high effect. In other words, so something that is dependable but also produces at a high quality instead of like a cheap mic or cheap files or cheap this, cheap that, that we all know like we get bamboozled from on the internet for sure, right? Until you actually get the device and see how poor the quality is. It looks all nice and fancy. It's got a pop mic, whatever it may be. I don't know if you want to do, let's say, podcasting, but it actually is kind of like garbage at the end of the day, right? And proof in pudding, like I've got that one of those because I try to test and see like, okay, this is cool. I can get this from, let's say, Take a Lot or whatever it may be, and it costs kind of cheap, under $300, but it was absolute rubbish. My phone was better. The actual recording on phone was much better, right? Anyway, sidebar, carrying on the stories, right? So definitely, please, like you need to know how to work with audio, even if you are going to be majoring in video next year, is super important, right? However, the infrastructure that the internet requires varies across different countries. So some countries use telephone cables. So in terms of our location, so our geographical location, the way that that is the way that that infrastructure is used. Others will use ISDN, ADCL. If we have the option for fiber, which we do here in South Africa, we have the option for all of these, right? Fiber optic technology, 3G, and obviously not soon. Now we have 5G post-COVID, right? So technology has significantly increased the speed and dependability of the internet services that we can and will use, right? Democratization, right, of information. So in other words, the internet will empower any individual with a laptop or a mobile phone to develop and share content. That's right, right? But now also, so one as a sidebar, just as a quick one, that content should actually be of a sound quality. And I'm saying holistically. So what you're saying on it, what you're covering, how you record it, like is it clear? I'm saying, is it clear visually? Is it clear audibly? What are you trying to do with it? Like don't just like we know there's so much rubbish out there, but you are a professional content creator. And so you got to keep that in mind. Anyway, in terms of threats now, we can say like in the world of radio, so there's benefits and threats. One benefit obviously includes the fact that we can sit and depend on one citizen journalists, right? Or on information or media or videos or reels, whatever that is captured that is true that we can actually use and drag and pull and extract and use within the context of our shows, right? Radio stations can make their own content available now outside of live radio. So now the radio station lives, yes, 24 hours on air, but it also lives online for 24 hours, 7 days a week, obviously, 365 days a year, right? So we can create podcasts, which we have been doing so for forever and a day, right? The moment we could actually audit, so not audit, edit audio mediums or clips, whatever it is, content, audio content, and we had access to now the internet. So this is many years ago, again, predominantly, like I say, around 2000, around the year 2000. We've been doing this forever. Yes, they are called podcasts, but these are rinse cycled, uh, repeated, there we go, that's the thing, repeated segments of the show. So podcasts are defined actually as unique individual pieces of content, of which if you are basically taking, which is what we all do in radio, we all have an Iona channel, Spotify, Apple stations. I'm saying they will pull and we will pull and we'll edit our, or they will edit the station depending on obviously resources and money or whatever it is, and they will put that up on air, right? I'm saying, sorry, online. So what happens is then afterwards, is that yes, the stations now must also develop and produce their own independent podcasts, right? So unique podcasts. The only reason why you would go to, let's say, or one of the reasons you would go online and let's say draw traffic and visits to your landing pages, etc., is to actually break through with unique independent content, right? Like podcast series, right? Stations can count their web traffic as a key metric to sell to advertisers. And so we can sell that because we now do digital advertising and digital strategies and digital expenses, I'm saying to you, so pictures and expenses and whatever it may be, right? Okay. So however, obviously, at the same time, individuals outside of professional radio environments obviously begun to do their own thing as well. So now this becomes a possibly competition for the station to itself, one just as a medium, but most definitely, like we have to consider like a quality storytelling, again, like intrigue, attention, all those things, right? We can't just say, which actually does unfortunately happen. The stations will monopolize the podcasting industry now, as you've seen specifically. If you look at kind of like awareness and accreditations, validations, and obviously, let's say, like awards and stuff, right? The stations, because they have so many, like so much at their hands in terms of resources, they have the money to back up the production of really supposedly more so I say supposedly because I you can't say that they are just better than everyone else. There's too many podcasters out there that are doing stuff, and some of them are doing really great stuff, right? So we're not in any way saying that the radio stations are dominating because they do it better, but they do dominate because they drown individual independents out easily. They've got money for marketing, they've got money for names, they've got money for production, and they've got obviously the station's brand, which the podcast piggyback on, right? So some disadvantages, right? The high cost of data here in South Africa, we know that. There's kind of like do I really want to waste my time like streaming something. Slow line connections that are unreliable still result in buffering. Still, here in South Africa, we still have that, and we have almost like we have dead zones, particularly at Boston. Like my network, which is actually Vodacom sidebar, right, is fine. But then when I try my cell C there, because I've two phones, right? When I try my cell C there, nothing, nothing. There's nothing, which is a bit it's a bit frustrating for someone living in 2025 that we still have dead zones, massive dead zones and across the country, which is ridiculous, right? Anyway, whose fault that is, I don't know. I don't care, and I say that in a nice way because I'm a customer and a client and a consumer. So please fix it, man. With fiber optic cabling, 3 and 5G technology, radio stations and broadcasters can access home and businesses with ease and low cost now. Of the optional low cost, the fiber optic cable can carry 600 times more data than a standard telephonic cable, right? Which is made of 6 strands of copper, right? So most radio stations now stream their broadcasters online as well as through obviously the traditional, like we have an infrastructure for FM and AM, right? This means people can access it anywhere. So you can be a regional station, but you might have listeners, or you do have listeners in other provinces right here in South Africa, and yes, across the world, right? Do you target them? No, you target your target core audience, as we mentioned in previous lessons before. Many radio stations also have mobile applications only if the application has something more to offer than just like a streaming station or like regurgitated podcasts and stuff. No, like otherwise, why have the app? You can just stream it on Radio ZA, right? So this has increased the number of listeners that a radio station can obtain. Very difficult to obviously accumulate the number of unique listeners on a so when I say difficult, it's chalk and cheese. What we find in the BRC Rams, and what we find from our bottle, if you heard that little snap. Anyway, and what you find on like in terms of a digital environment, users versus listeners, very different, right? Okay. we've seen a variant of this already. Um, with the mixing desk obviously here, so it's a DJ most over here with a microphone over there. There's a processor and transmitter. We don't necessarily need to see that. I'm saying as DJs, in terms of like what communicates the transmission, right? The actual broadcast to satellites, right? That are owned predominantly, or if and only by Centec, right here in South Africa. We have the off-air check, right? Off-air check, feed to telephone and OB. So we have obviously those ISDN, ASDL lines, the disk output for any types of recording that we might want to do. There's the listen at the bottom here, but we have monitors in the studio to be able to hear what we are playing, right? Headphones plugged in there with more monitors. Outside source of OB or newsfeed will come into, remember we spoke about that, through the ASDL or the ISDN line, right? And telephone balancing, right? So we have a telephone in the studio where we can make calls directly to, or we can use, let's say, a computer so a computer application, a PC application that is linked, yes, to telephone lines that we can obviously like phone a person or for an interview, and obviously it comes through on the desk out to the speakers over here. And then of course we have USB players and also CD players for particularly the moments that we are off air or something is wrong with the desk, right? It happens more often than you actually think. All right, right. Or Syntec is no, if Syntec is down, I'm saying the extra transmission, you can't do anything. Anyway, sidebar. Right, here we go. This is so close to it's not it is not on it's not the answer, right? To the OB, but remember I'm saying the question in the man, what is it called? The formative one, right? Okay, it has to do with remember it said there what equipment would you bring, right? For an outside broadcast. We get into that particular point. But as we just said there, let's quickly go through it again. Mixing console or desk, microphones, headphones, headphone distribution amplifier, right? Broadcasting computers containing obviously the playback system, the scheduling system, which is on the back end, right? News share points where bulletins are emailed and slugs, news clips are loaded, telephones and hybrid telephone systems, computer stations, and video display monitors with those CD players in there, right? What else do we have there? Flashback. Oh, sorry, not flashback, flash or USB players. The only clock, the only lights to tell us, listen, yeah, like we're on it now, it's red, please. And also people outside that it is red. They mustn't come storming in there, making noise, talking, whatever it is, right? The server room is somewhere situated. It's very cold. Obviously, it's because we need to keep those servers from being or getting to anything that's warm, and them obviously what's a word for it? But anyway, not breaking down, but yes, that's what he does to any PC. And remember, the servers have to be on all the time, every single day, all day, right? Okay. Air conditioning, source compression, signal compression, transmitter compression, patch panel for routing and connecting link sources, and a reliable, obviously, clock, right? Same thing over here. Right, that's what a mixing desk actually looks like. And then a microphone over here. Particularly, there are yeah, monodirectional mics, right? We have multi-directional mics, unidirectional mics, and the thing is again, for example, so multi-directional to pick up ambient studio noise, everything that happens in the studio. We can talk here, there, whatever it is, the mic will pick it up. Some radio stations prefer to use unidirectional mics, right? So really just kind of like making sure that a unidirectional is kind of like a so uni means one, doesn't it? Right? Monodirectional, it has to do definitely with the way that it is processed as well, right? So I'm not going to lie to you. Let me just, because now my understanding of the two are kind of the same. Monodirectional mic. Okay, monodirectional mic. So single directional, yes, that's what I said there. Okay, I'm going to just read this out, right? A directional microphone is a microphone that picks up sound primarily from one specific direction. So the ones that we have in studio at Boston are more than likely monodirectional mics, right? If we talk about a unidirectional, more than likely, let me just quickly do this here for you. There we go. Are most sensitive to sound arriving from directly in front, the angle referred to as 0 degrees, and less sensitive in other directions. So this makes unidirectional mics effective in isolating the desired on-axis sound from both unwanted off-axis sound and ambient noise. All right, and then multi-directional is quite, I think, stock standard understood, right? The CD players, right? So many radio stations no longer have CD, but they have USB players, right? So we used to use the CD player. Should the station, I'm saying the system, the desk, and the system go off air, we have to play some music. The CD is constructed, or now the USB player is constructed with a playlist, a long playlist. For hours and hours and hours. That also reflects the music rotation of the station as well, with jingles in between and this and that, or whatever it may be, right? So we play that until we have the problem that we are busy dealing with fixed, right? Nowadays, stations solely rely on the playout system to transfer audio to the mixing desk. That's fine. And instead of obviously before we did, so back in the day, and again around 2000 and before, would have a CD or a tape player that we would put in CDs as part of the playlist that we were playing on air. I'm saying so via the playback system, sidebar, and obviously versus what we might pick out from the library, the music library, and CDs. Okay. Anyway, these pieces of equipment are still used as backup systems if the cloud obviously crashes, and the play out system is installed obviously on the studio PC. I just want to see. Well, I want to just get because yeah, let me just finish this and then I'll get to the video. So let's okay, so what else is in the studio equipment? One, obviously we include the telephone, obviously a telephone balancing unit, a TBU, and a hybrid unit. So as an actual telephone versus so what is happening. So what can be also used as a phone line on a PC with an app, right? It still has to go through like obviously a certain sorry, it goes to a certain channel, right? Either one is obviously allocated on a different channel, right? So the studio, the in-studio phone, and obviously the one, the I'll say the digital phone line, right? Monitoring headphones and loudspeakers obviously used. Know that. Want to be able to hear, like every DJ is more deaf or less deaf than another person, or more sound sensitive or less sensitive than the other person. So they'll put on their headphones as loud or as soft as they need. Ideally, you should put it loud enough to be able to hear your voice so that you can see like whether you are off mic or whether you're sounding good or clear, you're whatever it may be. Like the loudspeakers are there. When we switch the mic off, you can hear like a song and everything that is playing back or playing out from the playback system. So should, let's say, the system freeze, or you haven't for whatever reason put autoplay on or whatever it may be, right? And so the songs will stop or the jingle stops and the silence, the dead air. Like you need to be able to hear this. So please obviously use the loudspeakers. They're there for a reason, right? A production studio is generally what's opposite from the actual sound studio. I'm saying the broadcast studio. It's there for the sound producer, sound engineer, or the producer there, but also can be used as a backup studio should something go wrong with the actual main studio and its desk equipment, so on and so forth. Right. So pretty much every station should have a production studio. Some stations don't. Excuse me, man. So some stations obviously don't because they just don't have the money, right? It's not man. Those desks can cost up to 1 million. So it depends on the size and the make and the brand of the desk, but it can cost up to 1 million rand, and that's expensive, man. Obviously, it's expensive. I'm saying the obvious, but sure, man, we don't have people don't have that kind of cash. Anyway, so it costs to have a production studio or a backup studio or more than one studio, right? Okay. Anyway, but it is best to rather invest in one because you want your station alive all the time, right? So the mixing desk will usually have a master fader, right? So the master fader will control the volume of all the other faders, right, on the desk, channels on the desk, and other things that obviously we need to just take note of. The microphones must be, so let's say we have two, three, four microphones in the studio. They can't be close to one another. Otherwise, it's going to be this. If both mics are on, we're going to have a bit of an issue in terms of what I would think would be like some kind of not reverb, but it's gonna definitely um affect the kind of like the sound delivery, right? Or the outcome or output. We have to have them far away enough for them to be able to be like kind of moved and controlled by each individual presenter or guest, whatever it is in the studio. All right, to ensure there was sufficient space to ensure that the sound does not bleed. Okay, a line of sight with other microphones must always be maintained. So, in other words, the presenter and everyone else must be able to see each other when they are talking to each other. It's silly to place something too close to another person as well when you know they have to interact with one another on a or any specific show, right? Square 90-degree corners are avoided so because they cause standing waves and give the room a mid to low frequency of amplification, which causes the sound over presenter headphones to be quite hollow. So, so, um, so, so, for example, you can't see our particular studio at 919 is set up. It's a small studio. It's a very expensive one. Cool, but it's because of it being too for me. It's a little too small. You have to really be careful when you switch your mic on as the main host and then a guest's mic on there it becomes a little hollow. You hear kind of that little echo, right? If the mic starts to or is directed slightly to the left or slightly to the right, and when I say slightly to the left or right, it's closer to the direction or in the direction of another mic in the studio, and then boom, all of a sudden you hear that hollowness, right? That comes not only in your earphones, but definitely on air. So you need to be able to fix that kind of thing. Is like make sure that you are putting, like I say, it's like mouth to what do we say there? It was like straight direction from mouth to mic directly um executing four fingers apart sidebar as well to get that really clear and concise sound that you want from a mic to mic. Anyway, it's necessary to line the room with thick padding. Definitely want it soundproofed. Uh, yes, you can make makeshift soundproof even your own room by making sure that there are, I don't know, mattresses and pillows and blankets if you want to record at home, right? I'm not saying you're going to record a show from home, but a podcast or whatever it may be. Please go and have a look at these two, right? Two links over here for your just for an extension on. I'm going to just switch before I finish up the lecture. I'm going to switch to this one here. Oh, that was the one. I can open another link. Okay, open now. Just watch this video.
Talking about audio is like dancing about chickens.
I heard the Adam speakers and I
Whatever. Okay, YouTube. Come on now. Just give it a second. So watch this video and close up the and we'll just watch it, man. For goodness sake. Give me a second. Right, here we go.
In this video, we'll take a look at what I carry in my work box. I'll leave links to everything I talk about in this video in the description below. Let's get started. The Pelican 1510 case is somewhat of an industry standard for a personal work box. It offers enough space for a good toolkit without being too bulky to take with you. It's big enough for a 15-inch laptop and everything else you'll need to feel prepared on the show site. The foam insert that comes with the case is not very good. The idea is that you're supposed to pluck these foam cubes out to make compartments for your equipment, and though this might work for making custom cases for larger pieces of equipment, it isn't ideal for a toolbox you'll be working out of. The foam quickly starts to tear and your stuff gets mixed up. The Trek Pack insert is a modular system that is fully customizable. I've tried several inserts for the Pelican 1510, and this is by far my favorite one. It's rugged, clean, and easy to configure and reconfigure the sections. I always carry a simple audio cable tester that has the ability to test XLR, TRS, and NL4. You can get them fairly cheap, so I'll usually go for a middle-of-the-road tester that looks well built. I've been happy with this one by DBX. A cable tester is a must, but the Q-Box is even more powerful if you can carry one. It lets you generate tones and monitor inputs with the built-in speaker. You can plug it in at any point in your signal chain to test that you're getting signal to that point. This is really useful when you just want to verify or check what is coming out at a specific output or cable. Sound Tools makes some really cool stuff. This transmitter receiver XLR tester is one of my favorites. It's a two-piece tester, which makes it useful for testing long cable paths. You connect one part to the male end of the cable and the other to the female end of the cable. The LEDs on the device will tell you if your cable is wired correctly and what's crossed or disconnected if not. You can also quickly test continuity and patching by simply turning on phantom power. The LEDs at the end of this piece turn on whenever phantom power is engaged, so you can make sure that everything is properly connected. It's generally a good idea to carry a multimeter with you, and if you're dealing with three-phase power or feeder terminals, it's 100% necessary. Don't make the same mistake I did and buy a multimeter with an analog meter. I put a link to this one in the description below. It has a digital screen, and it isn't that much more expensive than a cheap analog meter like my old one. A 3.5mm to dual 1/4-inch adapter is something you'll use every show to connect your phone or laptop to the console to test the system. This can also be useful if you need to provide an auxiliary input on stage. Throw a DI box on this and you're set. The great thing about this adapter compared to the 3.5mm to XLR adapter is that this one will connect to the line inputs on smaller mixers, helping you to avoid accidentally destroying your device with phantom power. This is my favorite way to get auxiliary devices into the system. It turns any 3.5mm output into a balanced signal so you can place it anywhere you need without worrying about cable length or DI boxes. It also has a built-in level knob, which is good when you need to disconnect and reconnect a device without causing a pop in the speakers. I think it's perfect for on-stage aux inputs because it's easy for non-audio people to use, and it sums the stereo signal into a single channel so that only one XLR back to the mixer is required. I can't tell you how many times I've been saved by an XLR turnaround adapter like this one. Let's say you've run out of input or output channels on your Snake. Using an XLR female-to-female adapter on one end and an XLR male-to-male adapter on the other end will let you turn any input into an output or any output into an input. I carry at least 4 of each of them. I've also been saved on a number of occasions by XLR to 1/4-inch adapters. It's common for smaller consoles especially to have TRS outputs instead of XLR outputs. An XLR female to 1/4-inch adapter would allow you to connect an XLR line level output to a TRS input on a console, and an XLR male to 1/4-inch TRS adapter is useful when you need to connect a TRS output to an XLR input. You could also use one of these on each side of a long XLR cable and essentially have a long TRS cable. Of course, you'll want at least one XLR cable. The most important part is that these have Neutrik XLR connectors, which are more durable and much easier to repair. Make sure you get cables with Neutrik connectors, because there's nothing worse than the old school type with a tiny set screw like this one. Black gaff tape is essential for taping cables down that would otherwise present a tripping hazard. Bright colored gaff tape is really good for labeling snakeheads, fanouts, and DI boxes. You might even find the different widths valuable, but get yourself at least one standard roll like this one. You'll definitely want to get a good brand here. ProGaff is the type I've used mostly, and I would highly recommend them. It's strong, easy to tear, and it won't leave sticky residue on the surface. You can never have enough Sharpies. You may even want to grab two 36 count boxes. Trust me, if you're anything like me, you'll lose them in no time. They're useful for labeling consoles, DI boxes, snakes, snakeheads, subsnakes, subsnakeheads, console fanouts, and anything else you can imagine. Carry extras so that you can lend them out to others. You probably have a full microphone kit somewhere on the show site, but it's nice to have one of these with you just in case. The SM58 is an industry standard. They're virtually indestructible, so you're more likely to lose it than you are to break it. I might even recommend the SM58S, which has a built-in on-off switch. That way you can use it as a talkback microphone to the performers and crew on stage without the need to mute and unmute the channel on your console. I don't personally have the switched version because I've been using this cable by Sescom that has a built-in switch right here on the connector. An extra DI box is a good thing to have as well. You never know when you'll be one DI box short, and you'll be glad to have that extra one when the time comes. The Radial Pro DI is rugged and reliable, but you can save some money and still get a reliable DI box with the Whirlwind Imp 2. You can use it for keyboards and guitars, and it's also nice when you'll need to run a long cable for an aux input like a phone or laptop on the stage. You may have your preference for headphones, but I've been very happy with my Audio-Technica M50Xs, especially for live sound because they're so portable. I've been using these headphones since 2011 and recently bought a new pair just like them. Whichever headphones you choose, get a pair that has decent sound and decent isolation. That way, they can become your baseline reference for tuning and mixing. You can find every tool I talked about here in the description below this video. If you got value out of the video, hit the like button and watch the video that's on your screen now.
Right, yeah. That might be another thing. I know. That was a bit more interesting for me when I saw that then just running you through, for example, it's like, that's not bad, but okay, like I didn't want to go and now it's like a repeat what we might have seen in some of the previous lessons as well. Let's close up the lesson now, and then I wish you a very good week ahead. Just in terms of outside broadcast, please don't forget, please again, to go and have a look at these particular links on your own there. Right, so to just kind of recap and rewind and end off this lecture, the outside broadcast. We must see to that there could be the option of the little van, the tiny van, which inside there it's an amazing little van. It's got like a little studio in, it's got the desk, it's got a computer, it's got the playback system, it's got everything in there. That would be in a fully fledged studio, right? And this is a good investment as well because as opposed to okay, again, it's about stations and how much they can afford, right? So let's say you have so you have your own, obviously you have OB equipment, but it's, I'm going to just use the word segregated, right? It's compartmentalized, segregated. There's speakers on the one side, there's a desk on the other side, there's microphones to plug in, all that, whatever it may be. This is here all in one mum, right? All in one mum, as opposed to having to carry. And also, for me, I would imagine it be more at risk because. Like, let's say it does rain. Yeah, you couldn't care less, man. But if you're doing an outside broadcast with external equipment, right, that's a bit of an issue, right? Okay, so just the following figure will show the setup of. Here we go. We start always here in studio, headphones, monitors, and once again, this type of stuff. that you've seen before, going to the satellite out to the listener here. With the OB itself, right? So here we go. Here's the OB, the mixing desk at the back at the OB with a microphone at the OB itself. Obviously, include maybe headphones there as well. The OB feed goes to a codec, right? So the codec, what is a codec? It will trans man, it will what was I going to say? It will process, so it processes one format into another format, right? So we get the codec at the OB that will obviously like put it into specific format, right? Or will transfer it in specific format, and then get into the codec that will then obviously translate that or process that into the right format for what goes out on air. Okay, let's have a look at this. So here's your checklist. I think this isn't this the answer to your um your assignment, right? Okay, engineering, technical production. What do we need? The items, the microphones. Four based on the number of contributors, right, or interviews. Three based on site on a site like Recon, right? Okay, so cables, sound mixers, DJs, a PA system. The PA system means like we want to be able to talk. So the PA system is going to be what we broadcast to, like people can hear. It's the studio. I'm saying the man, come on, come Chris, man. Uh, the what is it? The speakers. There we go. The speakers with obviously the microphones right together, the PA system so that people can hear, right? One, one, one. And then five particular headphones, depending on obviously how many you need, but also the technical person does also need that as well. Battery packs, one, mat covers, four, based on obviously the site recon itself, the site, it's the makeup of itself. Mat covers obviously for your equipment, because I mean, you don't want to just put it on the ground, right? Power banks and extension cables, two codecs, obviously one on the other side, as we saw in the infographic before, right? Programming, want the log sheet, obviously libraries, two copies of each, right? Marketing or operations teams, one obviously tables and chairs, two and five. Once again, just in synchronization with that. Branding, two roller banners, one media hall, two tablecloths, three bean bags, one branded carpet, three teardrop banners, and six sandbags. I'm not going to pretend to know the difference between the. I know if I look at them, I know exactly which banners need to be where and the shapes or whatever it is, but I'm not going to be pretend to know what the difference between a roller banner and a teardrop banner. Oh, the teardrop is the one that's literally shaped like a teardrop. So it's kind of like okay. All right. Anyway, no novelties. Okay, five packed goodie bags, t-shirts, first aid kit. If anyone or anyone like, let's say, a listener who's come to attend the OB or obviously staff need some first aid because it is you're accountable for that, right? Especially with let's say an outside broadcast at a massive event a ton load of people there. People get dehydrated, or they might be taking certain substances, whatever it may be. It's still, or they drink too much. You still are actually accountable for their safety, right? Anyway, per diem, right? Eight vehicles, one OB van, minibus vehicle, and a sedan vehicle from the station itself. All right. So the planning that goes into an OB is critical, right? To an OB, right? An OB is, sorry, Aman. An OB is critical to its success. The setup of an OB happens in advance of the actual broadcast. We must go there. You must go to recon the space that you're at. Do you have the right positioning between or in the event? At an external event, an OB can attract significant amount of attention. But obviously, if it's hidden in a corner or this, the band, obviously the out like the banner the marketing, like the banners, etc., not set up in place. And you must also account for wind and all that. And like I say, weather and I want it rained out. Make sure that you are obviously branding correctly. Please go for homework. Example 7B, right, in the textbook in um, Next Level Radio. So sorry, my mind is just so slow today. All right, for the small pauses back then and again. Right, and then I will see you live in class. Okay, next week. Cheers.